film that shocked and disturbed audiences so much that it's also labeled the scariest film of all time. The Exorcist. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I do appreciate you stopping by. Now this is a Steelbook review, so I'll quickly touch on that, and then we'll get into the review itself. Alright, so for a while I had been looking for a Steelbook of this film, not because I overly love the film, but because it's a classic piece of cinema history, and I saw a version of it that I really liked, but it was super expensive. So I waited a little bit, and then I came across this version, which is in the red, and it's also the extended director's cut. So I bought this one instead. I love the red idea because it's really ominous looking. Here's the inside. You can see here there's Regan, and obviously when she's possessed, and then we also have the disc, and then you have the back. Here's the shot of the priest holding the crucifix. Yeah, I think it's a great steelbook. I love it. Alright, so let's get into this film. I've wanted to review this for a while, but I'm not sure how to go about it because my feelings on it are mixed and the subject matter is pretty intense. Up until that time period, no one had seen a full-on possession movie. No one had seen anything this raw in showing demonic possession. I'm not going to talk about realism because I've never seen someone who's been demonically possessed. I don't really have anything to gauge, like a set point to base off how realistic this movie is or not, so I'm just going to totally forget that. But in this movie, there's a little girl and her mother is an actress, and her daughter is living with her in this house near the set of this film there her mom is acting in. And this little girl, her name is Regan, she slowly starts showing these weird signs of almost like a sickness of some sort, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And she sees doctors and they say, well, maybe it's psychological. She sees psychological people and they say, we don't know what this is. Sometimes people with mental illnesses, they think they're being possessed, so therefore they act like they are, and then the only way to snap them out of that is to have an exorcism. I don't really have to explain all this, but basically an exorcism is where you cast out a demon that is in someone. In the Bible, Christ did it a few times that we know of. The disciples also. Also in the Catholic Church, over time, it has been done before, so it is a real thing. As far as how crazy people act when they're possessed, I'm not sure. But anyhow, so they end up getting this priest to come and perform an exorcism with the help of another priest. That's basically the movie right there. The things I liked about this movie, I watched it years ago, and I thought it was extremely overrated because people say it's the scariest film of all time, it's the greatest horror film, and it's really not. It's more disturbing than it is, scary. So the first time I watched this, I didn't care for it too much, but I just rewatched it the other day because I wanted to make this review, and I did like it more the second time. Now, this is one of those rare cases which, on a second viewing, I liked it more than the first time. There's only been a few films that have done that for me. One is It's a Wonderful Life. Thor Ragnarok. I hated that movie the first time I saw it, and now I really enjoy it. Blade Runner. The original Blade Runner, the first time I saw it, I'm like, man, this movie's overrated. Why are people always talking about it? And then I watched it like a year later, and I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. And every time I watch it, it just gets better. The Exorcist, in my opinion, is one of those movies that on a second watch, it got better than the first time. I thought they went about this movie in a very interesting way. It's almost like very, just like factual, almost like a documentary. And that's how I kind of felt reading the book too. Like it's just very matter of fact, and there's like just statements and stuff, and it doesn't rely on jump scares and the creepy music and the feeling of someone's over your shoulder kind of thing. But it does slowly build in intensity. So I thought the film did that well. The special effects are okay. The second time watching it, I thought they were better than the first time watching it. I'm not sure why, but there is some makeup effects near the end of the film where I felt it was a little too over the top. But that is what it is. The soundtrack, the first time I saw it, I did not like the soundtrack. The second time I saw it, I appreciated the soundtrack more. A lot of the scenes that involve Reagan when she's possessed actually don't even have music. So it almost makes it more scary because it just feels so much more like you're there witnessing this. I did read the book about a month ago, and I will say that the book helped me to understand the movie more. A lot of people are terrified of this movie and say it's, evil and whatever, but I actually think it has a really good positive message about faith, whether it's faith in yourself or faith in God, and about being selfless and trying to save someone. In the movie, the one priest, you can tell he's struggling with his faith, and he just doesn't even know why he's trying to become a priest. Like, he's still like a junior priest or whatever. I'm not sure what they call them, but he feels like almost depressed about it, and you can tell it's just gnawing at him. By the end of the movie, you see him be selfless, and he regains that faith in himself and that faith in God. And when he gets that, he's finally able to exorcise the demon. And it does come at a cost. So the movie isn't like everyone. I think people overlook the whole power of the story when they watch this movie and when they hear about it. Because when people talk about it, they don't really look into things themselves and come up with their own opinions. They just hear stuff and then repeat it. But like I said, I think parts of the story that are very important get overlooked because people just talk about how scary it was and stuff. There's multiple things in the story happening that are very important, and I think we can learn a lot of lessons from. So this demon possesses Reagan, and there's a part where the one priest says to the older priest, Father Marin, he says, "Why is it doing this?" And the priest says something along the lines of, "It's trying to tear us down." I always wondered, like, why is this demon going after Reagan and possessing her? Like, it's not going to get anything from that. But on this second watch, I realized Reagan wasn't the goal. The goal was to tear down the faith in this family and the faith of these priests. That's the whole goal of demons, is that they're nefarious. I mean, that is what they do. So it wasn't just to possess a young girl. It didn't really care that much about it. It was more about, I'm going to use this young girl as my vessel in order to just tear everyone down and tear their faith away from God. This is one of those things that, like, if you watch the movie more than once, you're going to pick up on these things. So that was nice. Now, the things I didn't like about this movie, like I said in the beginning, I think this movie is extremely overhyped and overrated. I think there's a lot scarier films out there. I understand at the time there have been nothing like this before, so I understand it just freaking the hell out of people. So I get that, but since the 70s, we've had a lot more violent, scary, graphic films, and that have way surpassed this. So this is a negative for me, but it's also an important part of the story. There is a very disturbing scene that involves a crucifix, if you're watching this review and you've seen the movie, you obviously know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to get into details in case you haven't seen it, but it could be considered extremely blasphemous if you're a very religious person. So I didn't like that, but at the same time, it is kind of pivotal to the story because you just see how this demon has just infiltrated this young girl's mind and body and just is wreaking havoc and despair on this family and the priests. Is it totally necessary? No. I think if I was making this film, I could have made it without that and still had it have the power that the film has. But this movie was not made by overtly religious people. The book was not written by someone who was very religious either, as far as I know. So I get why it's in there, but it's still kind of a negative for me. There is one part in the book, it says that Regan, when she's possessed by this demon, that she turns her head almost completely around. And in the movie, I don't know why they did this, but they literally had her head like turn around, like it did a whole 360, and that's physically impossible because it would actually kill you. It's just one of those scenes in the film where I'm like, even the book says it didn't fully happen, it just partially happened. So, but I can see why that freaked people out back then when they saw that for the first time. I mean, it is pretty creepy. I found the dialogue to be kind of weird. It was weirder reading it in the book compared to the movie, like hearing it and seeing everything on the screen. It felt way more natural in the film compared to the book. You know, that's just one of those things that, you know, why there's a difference between movies and books. So I know there was something else I wanted to touch on, and now I can't remember. Yeah, okay, so the beginning, it feels a little disjointed. Rewatching it, you know, I was kind of able to piece things together, but it's still a little weird. And I'm trying to figure out, like, when Father Marin was excavating in the beginning of the movie down in Iraq, when he found this little demon statue in the rubble, did he somehow unleash the demon, and did it like follow him back to America? Like, it's never really talked about, so I'm not sure why that part of the movie's in there. So the last part that I had a problem with is, so Regan, when she gets possessed, this demon starts just like tearing her body apart from the inside out, and her skin's beginning to crack and break and stuff. Well, when the priest finally exorcises this demon, it's like it shows a couple days later, and Regan and her mother are leaving to go somewhere else because they just need to get away. They're done with this, right? And she doesn't have like any like cuts or cracks in her skin, and it's like, just because that demon was exorcised doesn't mean that that vessel, that host, is all of a sudden like basically cured again. I mean, the physical ramifications would still be there whether the demon was in her or not. So that part just bugged me from like a logical perspective, I guess. Alright, so I'm going to rate this in 3 different sections. Usually I just do 2, but I'm going to rate this in 3. For personal enjoyment, this isn't really... this really isn't a movie that I watch to feel entertained. The only reason I ever watched it was because of the historical value, the cinematic value, because it's such a famous film. So it's not something that like I get entertained by, but it is something that, you know, if you're watching it, you can learn a lot of lessons from. So for personal value, I'd probably give it like a 7. For filmmaking standpoint, trying to look at it from the time that it was made, look at it from that perspective, but also look at it from things now. The film is made pretty well, I will admit. So I would give it an 8. I might give it a 9, except for there's just some story things that don't really make sense. For scariness and that horror vibe, for me, I don't think it's scary. Like I said, I think it's really just more disturbing imagery and disturbing content. On a scary scale of like 1 meaning nothing and 10 meaning like extremely frightening, I'd probably give it like a 5 or a 6. So, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know below in your comments what is the movie that freaked you out the most, whether it was as a child or as an adult. Like my video, subscribe, I'd really appreciate it a lot. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron, and I will see you guys next time. Or, you will see me next time. Goodbye.